This time on the Prop Master, well, we finally catch up to the spot that I thought we'd be in the second video. Which, if you think about it, is pretty much par for the course for me, so at least I'm consistent. Hey, I might be slow, but take a look at this. This is really starting to look good. This is the part of the build where I start to get kind of excited because this is really starting to look and feel like something real. And it's really exciting. And I just want to thank y'all for all the comments. We need more comments. The algorithm doesn't know I exist anymore, so we need to really work on interacting with the video so that I can get this actually out to people that want to see it. But even though this is a shorter video, there's still a lot to do, so we need to get started. So first of all, notice that this piece right here has been added on. I know it looks like it's got big gaps in it, but it's just been filled with baking soda and CA glue. So it's completely smooth and filled in. I added this piece on just to make this match the new template of the side trim piece. So if you've cut out a new piece, it will look like this, but without the the little line there. So the first thing we need to do is to sort of continue this down to the bottom with baking soda and CA glue. We're basically going to fill this gap right here and smooth everything else out all the way across. I know it seems daunting, but it's actually pretty simple. I've already done the other side. Using a straight edge, I can kind of continue this line right here. And it's not going to be perfect the first time. I can use this piece of scrap of Sintra here. And this is just thin CA glue. I just got it in a different container that's a little bit smaller. And apparently I need to cut the end off of it. Hold on. Let's try that again. Don't want to get too much past this edge here. Anything that is past that, I'm gonna have to sand away. Looks like I missed a spot right here on the edge. Okay, and like I mentioned in the previous video, don't stick your finger on here to see if it's completely kicked, because you'll end up with superheated CA glue stuck to your finger, and you can actually get second-degree burns that way. I like to hit it with a little zip kicker, but you can also wipe it up. Just take a rag and wipe up any extra CA glue, and then it should be fine. And let's just go with another layer. Now I want to clean up this edge a little bit here. I should have wiped that excess baking soda away first before I put the CA glue on it. On the first pass. Try to be more careful than me. I'm gonna have to fill that little gap now. Okay. We're actually getting pretty close. We just have to put a corner on it basically here at the bottom as well. Unfortunately, I can't lay this perfectly flat. Probably the smart thing to do is to take some tape. So just take a piece of tape. They'll help hold that edge. And this time I'm going to remove all this excess that's down here. It's looking pretty good. I think for this corner, what I really need to do is to lay this flat to where this is more vertical, or this edge would be more horizontal. Right now it's vertical. So let me readjust this and I'll be right back. Okay, this is a bit more of a conducive angle. We are getting there. I think it's time to do a little bit of sanding. Okay, let's see if we can put some more tape on here. And this is probably the last go we need here. I guess you could call this a layer. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Gonna tilt this up and give it just a little bit of super glue right on the edge. I'm not sure that it needs it, but there's a good chance that it does. Okay, so I just poured some in that area just to make sure that if there was any exposed baking soda that it kicked. And I know it looks rough, but it's going to sand up just fine. Let me sand on this a little bit and then I'll show you the results. Okay, so I know this still looks really rough with all the different colors, the different lightnesses of gray. But if I take my thumbnail, there's actually nothing there. It just looks like there's a big hole there. It's all quite smooth actually. So I think we're done with that. We can move on to the rest of the panels here. Now that this little section down here has been taken care of, let's go ahead and finish covering up this tube. I've got the right outside trim piece. You'll be able to recognize that because this little cutout here. And I'm going to go ahead and go with the hot glue again. But before I do that, I'm going to lay this down in the right spot. I want this inside corner to just hit this top corner here. And the spot where it's actually touching this tube, I'm going to put a mark there. And I'm just going to run a line down here. And that's just going to tell me where to put the hot glue. So I'm going to run a little bit of hot glue on this top corner here, and then I'll run some down this line right here, and then I can put it on. It's going to run down both sides, it's okay. And I want just those corners to touch. If there's any large drips, I want to clean those up. Large drips on the outside anyway. Okay. So this is what we want in case you weren't sure what I was talking about. Just the inside edges are touching, and there's kind of a little canyon running down through here. We'll take care of that later. Now, next we're going to take this thruster tank cover, and this goes on the opposite side of the tank here, or of the tube. And I'm going to take this top end here, this little top corner right here, and don't put it all the way at the very top. Put it to where it's pretty close to the bottom edge of this upper tank brace cover. And it's a little bit more difficult with this one because there's going to be a little bit of glue where this piece is attached to the tube, but that should be okay. And I'm basically going to repeat the process. Hold this in place, mark where the tube touches this. Now this time I'm going to go ahead and put a line of glue on this bottom edge and on here, and then put it in place. Concentrating on the bottom part of the end here. By bottom, you know, this end is the top, this end's the bottom. Make sure it has good contact all the way down. So make sure there's no large globs of hot glue anywhere. Now at this point you might realize that you don't have a piece that goes here. And there's a reason for that. With all of this just sticking together, there's a good chance that this space might be slightly different on every build, depending on, you know, how you attach this bottom edge here and where on, you know, this bottom edge gets stuck here. It's going to change these angles, and this distance will be slightly different. Okay, so I have a ruler here, and I'm just going to measure this distance between this inside edge, or the bottom edge of this piece, and the bottom edge of this piece here. Looks like 1 3/8 of an inch, or 3.5 centimeters. Your distance is probably going to be different. In fact, let me make sure that this is the same all the way across. Yeah, it looks like it's about, there's an extra 1/16 in that, so it's really 1 7/16. So I'm going to cut a strip of 1 7/16 inch centra here. Okay, here's my strip. And when you cut this out, it's better for it to be slightly small than for it to be slightly large. So keep that in mind. Now I'm just going to line this up with this bottom edge down here. And then I'm going to mark all of these edges or corners. Okay. And I'm just going to put a little arrow showing up. That'll give you the right shape for that piece. And I'll cut these pieces off, and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I have this piece, and just like before, I'm going to put it in position, and I'm just going to mark the spot where the aluminum tube touches it. Draw that line down the back. And this time, that's the only place where I'm really going to put the glue. I'm not too worried about the sides at this point. Now quickly make sure it's in the right place, because when the hot glue hits this aluminum tube, it cools very quickly. Okay, now everything's sort of clad around this tube here. Now we have to deal with these big gaps. And I think you probably already know what's going to happen now. Let me unplug my hot glue gun. And you guessed it, it's time for some baking soda. And this is actually the easiest application of baking soda, because you just fill in the channel. Okay, I'm not sure where my other applicator is, so I'll have to use this one. I think some of this is slipping through, so let's go ahead and put a layer of CA glue, thin CA glue. Okay, and I cannot reiterate this enough. Do not put your hand on this glue. In fact, I like to take the zip kicker and run that across there to kick off any excess CA glue. You can also just wait a few minutes, or a minute, and now I can put another layer on here. Here's the sections in here where it kept sort of seeping through the crack. A couple of pieces that are sticking up here. I should probably, while have the CA glue in one hand, I should have a paper towel in the other, so I can quickly wipe up these little CA glue spills, and then I wouldn't have to sand them down. Let's not get sidetracked. Let's go ahead and do these little low spots. The ends generally take a few tries, because you end up with kind of a little divot here at the end where it doesn't go all the way across, it just falls off the end. And if you can't get it completely smooth here at the end, that's fine. Right before we paint it, we're going to go over with some caulking, and you can easily fill those gaps with caulk. I want to clean as much of this excess off, because if there's any errant super glue drips, I don't want them to immediately freeze in place. This time I'll take my own advice, and of course that one works perfectly. Well, I had to say the word perfectly. Obviously, a paper towel that has been coated in zip kicker works pretty well to kick off super glue as well. So to correct the statement that I made earlier, in one hand have the CA glue, and in the other hand have a paper towel that you have not already used to soak up the zip kicker. And although that looks rough because of the different colors of the CA glue and baking soda, it actually feels completely smooth, except for this one spot here, which is still sticking up a little bit. Okay. Now we'll just have to do this one and this one down here, as well as this one on the inside down here, which you'll want to prop a piece up like this so you can gain access to that area easily. I'm going to do all of that, and well, I might as well film it while I'm doing it. No, it's in the bag, which is why I couldn't find it. Notice how I put it down here on the areas where I can reach it, and then I can push it up into that area. This one's the most difficult, really, to deal with just because of the weird angles, but it's still easy to do. It's a piece of hot glue. If you really didn't want to use super glue and baking soda for this, you could use wood putty, but the CA glue and baking soda just works so much better than anything else. A new paper towel that is not covered in zip kicker or baking soda. And I'm probably going to need it because it's a lot harder to get to this edge. Just move quickly. Also, my applicator is getting semi-clogged with CA glue, so the tip's not working quite right. I'm having to kind of large amount of CA glue just stuck to my finger. My applicator is not great, which is why I'm having such a hard time with this. A thin sanding block like this will come in handy for this because you can get a large area to really make sure things stay flat. And the truth is, I could definitely leave this. You know, you keep seeing me sanding areas out. It's probably smarter just to go ahead and fill in all these gaps all the way around and then go back and try to smooth everything out, because, you know, I'm smoothing this out and then I'm dripping glue on it again. So fill in all the gaps and then go back and start sanding. Yeah, this one's going to be difficult a little bit because I can see that there's a reasonably large gap right there, maybe a 1/64 of an inch or smaller, maybe 1/100 of an inch, but that's enough for the powder to fall through. So, hot glue time. Okay, I don't want to fill this in with hot glue. I just want to put a small amount. It's preferably down in the very bottom of the V, so I may lift this up a little bit so the gravity will work for me a little bit. I think there's still a few gaps in there. That should work just fine. Got a little clump of CA glue where I guess a drip came down and hung on the edge here. So that I will need to go ahead and sand off, because it's going to make it hard to put the baking soda in here. Just to make sure there wasn't a big lip there when I'm trying to make a perfectly level layer of baking soda. I think it's time for a new applicator tip. Okay, let's make one last adjustment here. Hopefully you won't have as many big clumps in your baking soda as I do. We got one low spot right there we need to fill. Now we can clean up all the drips and everything we made with the sandpaper. Okay, I've got my flat, thin sand. I mean, you can use a thicker sanding block for most of it, just not on that inside edge where you can't get anything larger into it. But I like using a large sanding block because, like I said before, you get a nice flat area through here. Reposition and do the rest. Okay. Also, you can kind of take off those sharp corners that are there right now. Just round those over a little bit. Now, I know it looks like there's a big hole right here and here and here, but there's not. It's totally smooth. It's just difference in colors for some reason. Now, you can see down here, that's what I was talking about before, how when you get toward the edge, sometimes the baking soda will kind of fall through. You won't get that filled up. That's actually big enough that I might want to try to fill that a little bit more with some more baking soda, but you can mostly just ignore those because we're going to come by at the very end with some caulk and we can fill any gaps like that with caulk. That's pretty big though, so I may actually fill that in. So I'm going to go ahead and keep sanding these until they're smooth, and I'm going to take these corners off just like I did here. And when I'm done with that, I'll be back. Okay, so this has all been sanded down very smooth, but I still have to deal with this little gap here. And I found the best way to deal with that is to use some tape to close off the end. I've just ripped a small piece of duct tape. Doesn't have to be duct tape, it could be any kind of tape you have. Masking tape, duct tape, you know, even gaffer tape or something like that. Now with that piece of tape there, we can easily fill that gap. Afraid I've got white everything here. Hold that there with my finger. Now I can go ahead and pull this off. Okay, and there you go. I'm looking on the camera and it does look like there's a little bit of a gap right here, but there's not. It's completely smooth. I don't know how to convince you of that, but it's totally filled. The next thing we need to do is to measure this gap right here. Because these were two different pieces, there could be some very small variations, so it's important for you to go ahead and measure yours instead of going by whatever measurements I have. So you want to take your measurement and then subtract 1/2 inch, which is 12 millimeters, roughly. Basically, it's the combined width of the two side pieces there for this dorsal ridge. And then I'll tell you how large a piece you want to cut that's going to go in the middle here. So, you know, it should be roughly 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters too small on each end or each side to fit in here. So once again, measure this, subtract the combined width of two pieces of your Sintra, which in my case is 1/2 inch, and that'll tell you what size a strip of Sintra to cut. Now in my case, as you can see here, it was 1 11/16 or 43.5 millimeters. Let me go ahead and clear some of this out of the way now. Okay, so now take your dorsal ridge side pieces here and take a marker and find the spot where the angles change. Well, there should be one down here and then one just up here. And mark those with a pin because you're going to want to be able to see those in just a little bit. And then measure in between those two. These should all be the same, which is 9.5 inches or 24.1 centimeters. And that's how long you want to cut this piece here. You cut this strip out before that was whatever your measurement was minus 1/2 inch. And we're going to go ahead and put this together here, and then we'll attach this onto the jetpack itself. And now that I'm thinking about this, I think probably what we should do is glue this upside down like that. And let's just go ahead and do that. Now you want this piece should fit in between these two pieces so that it'll be recessed down in between them. You don't want to do it like this where it's standing on top of them. You want it to be recessed down in the middle. So I'm just going to use some regular super glue for that. Just got some regular super glue. Probably gel would work for that better, but I'm still out of gel super glue. The reason why I say gel is just because it will stay where you put it. And I'm going to put this, run this little line of super glue up against the top edge of both of these. Not too much. As it is, I'm probably still going to glue this paper onto our piece, but it'll clean off. And using your lines to make sure you're in the right place, let's go ahead and just sort of torn between being able to see my lines and making sure they line up perfectly on top. Probably what I should do is I'm just going to add lines on the side. Try not to get it in the super glue, or do this, of course, before you put the super glue on would be better. Just so that I can see what I'm doing. And it looks like it's in the right place. Yeah, not as bad as I thought it would be. I'm going to go ahead and hit that on top as well. Probably overkill, but just make sure that there's no glue down here to stick my fingers to anything. And now we should be able to go ahead and attach this to the jetpack itself. Okay, change of plan. Instead of us trying to put this on the jetpack right away, let's go ahead and finish this out, and then we can sand some contours into a couple places, and then we'll put it on. I think that's going to work a lot better. Okay, what I've got here is the rest of this strip that I cut to get this piece, and I've got my super glue. I'm going to start by just putting a little bit of super glue once again at the top edge of each one of these pieces here. And you know what? I should cut this first. So before that super glue can dry, let me mark this and cut it. I'll be right back. Okay, here's my two pieces, and I'm going to slide this in here before that super glue dries, hopefully. Okay. So as you can probably see here, my lines do not line up perfectly, and that's going to cause us a little bit of an issue later on when I put this on. Next thing I'm going to do is to I cut this a little bit short, but I was in a hurry, so I'm not surprised. I'll have to fill that afterwards, but that's not that hard to do. So now I want to mark this. And this time, let's cut this out before I put the glue on. And I'll cut this and be right back. Okay. That looks pretty good. Once again, I'm going to put this glue on the piece itself. That should be cleaner as compared to putting it on this part and then smearing glue everywhere. I think that's already set up, but just to make sure. And I'll definitely have to fill this up in a second. But first, let's worry about this end right here. So for this end, you don't have to use, let me backtrack. I'm going to use this 1/8 of an inch thick Sintra. So it's half the thickness of what we've been using. But you don't have to do that. You can also just use the same Sintra we've been using. You're just going to have to sand, make sure it lines up at the top, and you'll have to sand more of it away. You'll see that in a second. And definitely it's worth having some Sintra of various thicknesses for whatever you want to work on. It's a very good material. Okay, so now I'm going to mark this one. Okay, I'll cut this and be right back. Okay, that looks good. Can't see it. I think I may have just put a whole lot of glue on there. Ah. I did put a lot of glue on there. And unfortunately it set almost instantly, which means I've got a big gap here. But you know what's going to come. I'll just fill that up as well. So do a better job than I did. I'm about 1/8 of an inch off on my position there, so I've got a big gap here. So I'm going to clean up this gap and this little dip here with just, you know, the way you've been seeing me do stuff before. I'll put a piece of tape on the bottom of this and then fill this with baking soda and CA glue. And I'll just fill this gap here with baking soda and CA glue, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so here's our piece, and I've filled in the gap here as well as the area here in the front. And while I was doing that, I went ahead and filled in any little gaps that might be in the top of the little seams. There wasn't much, but what there was, I managed to fill in. That's the reason why everything's been sanded so much. But you know, if you didn't make those mistakes, then you should already be at this stage. What I have here is a spare piece of the PVC, the same size PVC that the main cylinder of the jetpack is. And then this is also a piece, this is the a coupler that's the same size as it's the same size as this part here. So this part is the same as this part here on here, and then the other piece is the same size as this. If you don't have any spare parts, then you can actually just take some sandpaper and tape it onto your actual pieces. So you can also, you know, like I said, you can tape this onto the jetpack itself and use those shapes to sand this out. Basically, I need to sand this curve into the bottom of this end here, and then this smaller one in the end of this, so that they will fit smoothly onto the surface. Might as well start with this front part. So I have my smaller piece here, and I'm basically just going to use the sandpaper to sand that curve. I don't want to do the whole thing from this corner to this corner. I actually just want to do the inside and leave these parts longer. I'll have to fill in a gap that way, but that'll keep this at the right height. If you wanted to, you could actually just go do the whole thing, but then it's going to sit a little bit lower down. Stop every so often just to see what my progress is. If you want to put this in a vice grip or a vise, that would make life a lot easier, but I'm trying to film this, so I'll have to hold it. Almost there. In fact, I am there on this end, but not on this end, so I'm going to push down a little harder on this side. Okay, that looks good. If you fill your sandpaper completely, you can probably get away with washing it off, just rinsing it off. Actually, it turns out just wiping it off works pretty well, but rinsing it off will work even better. Now I've got this much larger section here with much less to do, and with this, I don't have to work as much. I just want to sand this down till this almost comes out the top. In fact, it might come out the top a little bit, but I just want to do this until I'm starting to sand away the bottom edges here. I'll probably have to fill those corners in after I put the whole thing together. Okay, I'm starting to take off that edge now, and I was already starting to take off this inside edge there, so we're done. And I was doing this holding the whole thing down flat because I didn't want to, don't hold it up like that. Make sure it stays flat. Okay, now we can actually put this on the jetpack. Okay, so we have our piece here, and let's go ahead and set it in place, and you'll be surprised, it should fit. You can wiggle it around, but you should have no problem finding a spot where it actually kind of sets down in all areas, and it'll be in the right spot at that point. Now, if you recall, I set this up a little bit wrong, so this side's actually sticking out just a little bit, or this side, so there's a little bit of a gap that I'll have to fill. But if I sight down this piece, down that way, I can see that it's going right down the middle, and it feels nice and flat everywhere. I'm going to go ahead and mark that end and this end down here. And then I can pull this off. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to run a bead of glue on the inside edge all the way down the sides. And then I'm going to take my super glue and just run it along the inside of these two lines. And actually the super glue will probably take longer to cure than the hot glue will take to cool, because I've only got a minute with the hot glue. Okay, so super glue goes here and here. See, my applicator's kind of messed up. And as quickly as I can, okay, that feels good, and it looks straight. And I don't think I need to use the baking soda technique on these edges. I think I'll just wait till the very end and I'll fill those with caulk. So I'll use the caulking and I'll fill all those gaps in there and smooth them out before I paint. So I've changed my mind one last time here. Instead of waiting until I'm about to paint this, I'm going to go ahead and smooth these edges out now, or fill in these little ridges here. And I'm going to use the Alex Fast Dry to do that. If you wanted to, you could go ahead and use the baking soda, but I want to make sure that I can smooth this out into kind of a transition from this piece to this piece. Instead of just being straight into it, I want to kind of have this curve into it. And the easiest way to do that will be to use this caulking. I'm just going to dip my finger in some water. I'm just going to kind of tap this in to fill that gap. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead Now that I've done that, I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit. I'll wipe my finger off on a paper towel and continue to smooth this. Okay, now I'm doing this front section here. Let me clean my fingers off a lot better. Yeah, there's a good chance I'll have to do this a second time. Sometimes as it dries, the caulking will shrink a little bit. It needs just a little bit more caulk. So once again, the water is just basically to keep it from sticking to my fingers. That one looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, and once that dries, I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. Now that this caulking has completely cured, I think this is a pretty good place to stop. I'll save the dentals until the very end when we do some of the more decorative work. So in the next video, we'll be working on the missile tower and all that encompasses. I really appreciate the comments that you've given me so far on these videos, and please keep that up because the YouTube algorithm seems to have completely forgot about me. And if I want to even maintain where I am, I need y'all to interact with my channel as much as possible. As always, if you've liked or found these videos helpful, please like and subscribe. Overall, I'm very happy the way this is turning out. I think we're going in a good direction. And with that in mind, I'll see you next time. Thanks.